kind of leaned over at a weird angle because I'm trying to get into the light and not seem so dramatic. So part 3 for radios. I'm going to talk about how to use a radio in a way that people don't necessarily know instinctually. So if you've never used a radio, as long as you're only using it with one other person, it really doesn't matter. You hold the button when you talk, you let off when you stop talking, and you listen for the other person. The most important thing is to make sure you're on the right channel. If there's privacy codes, make sure they're the same. That's all user manual stuff. The problem comes in when you have 3 or 4 people, then you start talking at the same time, which is stepping on somebody's channel. So in that situation, you might want to look into your radio and see if there's something called the Roger beep, which is the little beep at the end when you let off of the button. The reason this is important is because it'll be a signal that whoever is yapping is done yapping. If you're inexperienced with how to organize, if you get up more than 3 or 4 people, you're just going to be talking over each other a lot. And so if you're in a group that is organizing for a disaster, for example, or say you want to have a group that will check on neighbors if there is, let's say an earthquake happens and then everything settles down. Once you begin to form groups and you want to check on your neighbors, let's say you're a random social group, one of the things you want to do is start deciding how, if you're going to use radios, how you're going to organize them. You can just all get on the same channel and try your best to not talk when other people are talking, and if you have good discipline or if you don't have a lot to say, that might work. You might just hand the radios out to everybody and say and check them, and then go, because you want to check them. When you hand them out, make sure everybody hits the button. You can hear that one. Next person, next person, next person. That way the battery's not dead or it's not defective. The next thing you want to do, put everybody on the same channel, make sure that the radios can hear each other. That's the other reason why you check them. Make sure the privacy codes are all the same if you're using them. I don't know why you would. And then you say, if you have something important to say, you call it out. And then you have somebody who's central to that area and they write stuff down. Like, this person, I had to shut their gas off. This person has oxygen, uses oxygen, and they only have enough for the next day. So you should probably see if we can find more. That kind of stuff. If you want to do organizing, you can do it to a central person, stay on the same channel, keep everybody quiet. That can be difficult. The next level is to have what's called a net, which one person is in charge. So if you're in a small area, if you're checking in a small town and everybody can hear everybody, what you want to do is have one person in charge in this scenario. That person, if let's say somebody's going into a house and you have an injury and you want to report that, you call the person in charge. And so whatever you want to call it, net control or something, you call that person, they say, okay, go ahead. And then you tell them what you need to tell them. They say, okay, cool, I got it. And then you're quiet again. And that way, one person, hopefully, not too many people will talk over each other. Hopefully you don't have a whole lot to say, but one person is in control of the channel and acknowledges, and you don't talk like in between all of the other people. That can be like the simplest form if you have somebody that is comfortable with radios, for one person to take control. Another thing is you can organize, and you guys, like if you're in a small area, you don't expect other people to be operating radios all over the place. If you had GMRS radios, you put some people on one frequency, you put other people on another frequency. That way they can chat without stepping on other people. That's a little less organized, and that is kind of chaos, but it's a thing. Like if you were to send groups out to go door to door and you spread out, you could all be on channel 20, and then another group could be on the next on the next road over, and they could be on channel 22 or something. It's a way to organize. At least they could operate independently and then report back what they find. It's just another way of organizing, I guess. A more complicated way that could be useful is you have a bunch of people with like that normal FRS radios that you can store centrally and or have people have and hand out, and they could all operate. This is a little bit more complicated. A lot of radios can monitor 2 channels, and they'll only broadcast on one unless you switch to the other one. So you can what's called dual watch. In those scenarios, you would have everybody would be on one channel, and then your person that you're reporting stuff to would be on the other channel. So you could talk, keep in contact, make sure everybody's safe, and then if you have something to report that you want written down in the record that you're making, then you would switch channels. You would say blah, 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 and they would acknowledge you and you report back, and then you go back to the other channel. There's a few different ways you could organize that. The other way you would do it is to put it on low power, and that way that each team could kind of operate independently on low power, a low power channel like the middle 7 on GMRS, and then have another channel they're dual watching that's a higher power that they can reach other, your central person. There's a few different ways you can organize and be a little bit more effective with a lot of people, but it takes having a plan beforehand. You should definitely have somebody who understands radios, and hopefully several people, because the first thing you're going to want to do is do an equipment check, see what you have, see what people can bring, make sure it's all functional, make sure it all works together. And like I was saying before in the other video, even if you have radios that are on different frequencies, it doesn't mean that you can't still use them together. In a lot of circumstances now, especially with the radios that are coming out of China, like Baofeng's and Radio Oddity, and there's a few different manufacturers. They may be a GMRS radio or a MURS radio or even a ham radio, but they may be able to hear other frequencies. So even though you have a MURS and a ham, or a MURS and a GMRS, they can usually, if they're those kind of radios, and if once you start looking at them, you'll know what I mean. Often you can change them to frequency mode, and you can enter in frequencies that are outside the range. You are still limited by your antenna, so just because you can hear something doesn't mean you hear it very well. But you could take 2 radios that are MURS and GMRS. There's a handful that will interoperate, and that might be super useful. People will talk about that sometimes in terms of security, where I can talk on this and they're going to talk on that. Nobody will know both sides of the conversation, which is crazy because a lot of other people have the same kind of radios that do the exact same thing, and they will hear you. The other option is a simple scanner. This is only $125, I think, but it covers all of the radios that I have, except for ISM, except for that one weird band. It does cover not just all those radios, but it covers a lot of air bands, a lot of boat traffic, train traffic, all these things that you might not think are useful, but in a disaster, you never know who knows more than you. So having a scanner, so let's say you're organizing your community, you're going to want to have a place where you meet, and hopefully either a vehicle to operate out of, or if somebody had even an RV or something, you could operate out of that very easily. But you would want to have like a scanner so that you could gather information. Hopefully somebody else is monitoring that and adding frequencies that they can find. And then you would have a person that is central, that is managing the information. Ideally, what you want is another person who is a ham person that can start to try to make contact outside the area, because that's going to be the most important thing, is to not just coordinate supplies that are potentially coming in, but find information that you may not have locally and be able to spread that among your people, which can propagate farther. You're also going to want to have teams, teach teams things like how to remove a tree from a road. Hopefully you have people that know how to use a chainsaw. You don't have to teach them how to do that, because the last thing you want to do is do that in a disaster scenario, is add something that somebody has not had a lot of experience with. But these are all things that you want to try to come up with beforehand. You do not want to have to do this as something is happening. But if you don't have necessarily all these things in order, if you do have a group or something that you can start to organize with, these are all things that you can implement. Like, a lot of people have these kind of radios at home for doing other things. So all you need to do is, again, equipment check. You bring everything that you have, you see what you have, you distribute it however you have to, you check to make sure everything works, and you see how many batteries and things you can find for all the stuff that you have. It's very important to not just plan, but you have to have some plan to have your equipment working, which means having batteries, which means having a plan to be able to charge things. Whether that is a battery bank of some sort, or vehicle adapters, keeping your gas tank topped off just in case you may need it to charge a bunch of stuff. But these are all things that you don't have to have a lot of experience to do. You just have to have enough to get things started, and then you learn as you go. One of the things that I watched a lot of is videos after the North Carolina hurricane that hit, that was really bad. There was a lot of communities that came together, and one even somebody had a private airport. So they found somebody that could operate a radio, that had pilot experience, that could direct traffic. They basically created an airport out of a private runway that somebody had. And then you find a place to stage things. That way, when supplies, if they can bring in supplies on a helicopter or something, they can throw them in the shed, and then they can find out who needs them the most and distribute them. Organizing is one of the most important things you can do after disaster. And you'll find most often a lot of the stuff that you need is local, and the things that you don't have, people are going to try to bring it to you. You just have to organize for yourself, find routes in. That may mean removing trees. But you have to be able to do all this stuff safely. You have to be able to find people that know how to do this stuff, and then let them lead teams of people doing it. But it's not rocket science. It doesn't take a ton of experience. But in any sort of disaster, you're going to find people that have experience in this in one way or another, whether it's, they may have worked in the DNR and they know how to remove trees and stuff. They may just be a logger. They may be people that have chopped their own firewood. But there's going to be a bunch of people. The trick is to find people, as many people as you can, that have knowledge, and put them in situations where they can do the most good. So hopefully this is a good little primer for radios. I may do another one if I figure out other subjects to talk about. But I think if you knew nothing, at least now you have an idea of what to look for and what might be most effective for you. Like I said, I'll do another one eventually when I figure out what I missed here. But until then, I'll see you in the next video.